Good evening, everybody. I see
Good.
Team Flexing on them's already up in the comments. Good
A
to
lot
see
of
y'all.
comments already. John,
Mhm.
we got a couple people on Base Wars account, of course. That always seems to happen. David, John, thanks. Kind of
Good to see
glancing at
everybody.
everything here already, trying to move some stuff around for me here.
All right. Mr. Corey Otis is going to be a little late, as usual, for our guest. No big deal. We will sit here and have a little conversation before he comes home. Good evening, Shane. How are you? David Jenkins. Nice to see all my guys up in here. Speaking of, I'm gonna need everybody to go to UAF this weekend because I am gonna host down at UAF for Jordan. Jordan's had something
Excellent.
up and can't exactly do it this weekend. So we will be headed down for him. So I need everybody to come out because that's a long way for me to go.
Everywhere seems to be a long way for you to get there once in a while, though. This one
Yeah,
is
the
this one is
police here
exceptionally
where I
long.
live,
I'm looking at it now. That is a long way for you.
the police where I live want no part of this base stuff. So yes, it's get out of town. But UAF is about 4 hours for me, so y'all come out and help me out here. Billy's gonna drop me a tent off down there, so I don't have to take my tent since my truck's tore up. All I
Nice.
gotta do is take a TV and head on down.
Not a bad thing to have happen if you got the people there to do it for you. And if you only got to bring one or two things, hey, you bring the entry
I
forms, you
know.
bring a little bit of change, you bring, your TV, you're good to go. Make sure you got the computer too, of course, but
Oh yes, of course. But man, it's always nice when you don't have to load everything up.
very true.
I can jump in the Civic and actually get gas mileage. We're gonna do this.
I wish I could jump in my little Honda Fit still, but I haven't put in the windows yet since they were smashed out at the beginning, kind of the second week of last month yet. I just picked them up on Monday night, I think, or Saturday,
Mhm.
Sunday, Monday. I don't remember.
Well,
Finally
did
got
you
all the
have
broken.
last
I got the
weekend?
broken glass sucked out of my car door at least. So, and while I'm in there, I might as well do the speakers. So, finally, after a year and a half almost, I'm finally going to upgrade my stock speakers, stock radio, everything.
Uh, well, you had a show last weekend, and y'all got to play in a little bit of snow, didn't you?
We did. We got. I'm gonna guess it was maybe 3 inches down at my little short notice show down in Yankton, South Dakota. Here, it's right along the border with Nebraska, which had my longtime friend Rocky Fredrickson come down from darn near Canada. He lives about 30 miles south of Canada. He made the trip down for not only just my show, but for a Halloween party that night. And he was saying that when he left up there, he had snow up to the bumper on his HRV, about 8 to 10 inches or so,
Oh,
and came down to see us. And when he got to the show, I think he actually kind of brought the snow with him because as soon as he got there is kind of when it started snowing. It was a little chilly anyway, but when he got there and when a couple of my other guys got there, the snow started coming down. We were getting about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches an hour at one point, and nice small little show. No complaints about
meanwhile,
that.
down here in the South, we were worried about dehydration. It was hot.
I was honestly worried about the semi truck that was in the ditch on the way home that made me take a about an hour long detour out of the way. So had a semi flip over on it onto its side. Probably been a meme out there already from one of the Swift trucks or something like that. Not that I'm saying all the Swift drivers are like that, but it seems to be them that everyone posts. But it happens up here. If you're going too quick around a corner in the snow and you especially first snow of the year, it's going to happen occasionally. I even slid through a couple of stop signs on my way home. Good thing is there was nothing else on the road.
Congratulations, Jeremy. First
Hey, there you go.
150. That's
Nice.
awesome on 212s.
Especially at
Love it.
35 hertz. Not bad.
Yeah, I love seeing our people do well.
I like if you've got a goal out there and it happens to be 140 and you pass it,
That's it.
hey, right there. You get it done. If it's 145, if it's 160, if it's whatever the goal is, less power, lower frequency at the same range of power or whatever, or just even getting to the show and competing might be your first show. As long as that is your goal and you exceed it, keep doing it. Come on back.
Exactly.
We'll be more than happy to help you get louder. We'll be more than happy to tell you, hey, try this, try that. Ask the person who you park next to. He or she might be in that same category with you, and they might have some good things to hear. So make friends when you're at our shows. That's why we do bring the fun back, as Jimmy likes to say. And as I'm seeing our little banner
Absolutely.
go across the bottom down there as well, that's the best thing about it is Base Wars is a fun time. It's good family-friendly entertainment. It's relatively inexpensive. 30 bucks every time you come through for the first class, 20 for each additional. David, what's a meter again? Well, a meter is a little bit over a yard. It's about 39 inches. And what's the best 18? Oof.
Can I answer this one?
You can definitely answer that.
Whatever you can afford
There you
is
go.
the best 18 for you. Honestly, if you can afford Scar, go with Scar. If you can afford the Sundown, go with the Sundown.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different subwoofers out there that if you know what your box is and know what parameters you need to be in, you'll buy a really good 18. There's tons of them on the market.
Get what you can.
And what I like might not be what you like. Because yes, they all sound different.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 18s for SPL and there's S for music. So keep that in mind too. Do your research. But as
Not
far as my
a
18s, I love my PSIs and I love my DCs and I love my Sundowns. So I've tried them all and I really liked them all. It's hard to buy a bad subwoofer right now.
Normally, I would say you can't go wrong with the ZV6s, but if you were not a fan of them there, Jesse and Jennifer, try different brands out there. Try DC, try DD, try American Base, try different Sundown sub, try different box parameters, maybe.
My question would be is how many cubes have you got in this box?
Yeah, what kind of
That's
vehicle?
going to tell you what you can buy.
Yeah, what were you anticipating, and what did it do that made you change your mind about them? Maybe it's not necessarily the subs. Maybe it's the box. Maybe it's the vehicle. Maybe it's the power. There's a lot of possibilities in that question.
Absolutely. And honestly, the guy that we come up on tonight's show, I would say ask him what 18s he has available.
Mm-hmm.
Because he puts some specialty built for us. And you can come up with some really cool stuff if you get a specialty built sub.
Yep.
Because like Corey Otis has got his, Directronics has theirs. There's some really good stuff there. Because they know what we break first.
And David puts up a couple of good questions there as well. You got to know what you've got as well and
Mhm.
what your main goal is with the subs. Can you have the right amount of power going to them based on what you have for power? How much power can you afford? How much space? Does it work well in a fourth order? Does it work well in just a basic ported box? A lot of different things, even the vehicle, what really works.
Absolutely. There are so many different scenarios that you really can't come up with a absolute answer,
True.
because if there was an absolute answer, all of us would be winners.
Yeah.
But Wally brings up a really good sub that's
Hmm.
a 18. Those are amazing if you can get your hands on some.
If you can get your hands on Neos, they're nice. They have issues, just like iron ferrites do. They're not going to be the same. And they might not necessarily be louder either. They might not have the right parameter for what you're looking for, or again, what your vehicle likes. So it's yeah, too many variables
Contact
to
me
the
after
single
the
question
show
sometimes.
because I could probably help y'all find a builder in Georgia because that's an area I work a lot.
There you go.
I would love to help y'all. And I know several great builders in Georgia. And yes, they do extreme SPL. Matter of fact, I've already weeded out most of the bad ones in Georgia. Ooh, and it's going in an Integra. I love my Integra.
Good cars if you want to get loud with them.
They're good cars if you want to break them that way.
Especially if you want to rip apart some roof panels. Roofs on them are not the most, they're a little flimsy. We'll just say that if you got enough power in the vehicle. I am talking like 20, 30,000 watts, but then again, if you've got that much power going to them, I know a few people that have done probably 40,000 watts in an Integra before, 10 to each coil. And they were able to do 60s, and they were loud. It was painfully loud, especially in a small cabin.
I would love to be able to help y'all out because I've got several builders in Georgia that I would trust. Very easy. All right. Who all has shows this weekend?
Oh, aside from you now taking over for Jordan's at UAF on Friday night, Richard's got a show out in California. Excuse me, Prim Valley, Nevada. I'm sorry. He is in Nevada, not
Nevada.
California.
And yes, that's the same show.
That one is Saturday, 10 a.m. So 12 o'clock noon for us here in the central time zone. But he's got one Saturday, Basin at a day to remember out there at Buffalo Bills and Prim Valley, Nevada. It looks like it's actually right on, God, it's right at an intersection of Las Vegas Boulevard and Prim Boulevard. So you will not be able to miss it. You driving down from anywhere out there, you're going to hear it. I'm sure of that.
Oh, they're going to have a blast.
Yeah. We got Ashland City has got a nice one as well in Tennessee.
That's a show, isn't it?
Let me see. Who is doing that one? I don't even see who is doing that one, unfortunately, but I'm going to guess. Let's see. Where is that outside of? Oh, that is by Ashland City outside Nashville. I would guess that is probably Pop Tart or
It
Melissa.
is Pop Tart.
It
Yeah,
is
but I
Pop
think
Tart.
it's
Okay.
a charity show for Mike Jones.
Sure.
Ah, I'm right. There we go.
Yeah, we got two others too. Well, one other. It's labeled twice. We got a Toys for Tots show in Collinsville happening this weekend as well out there in Collinsville, Virginia. So get on out there and bring some Toys for Tots there, guys and gals.
That should be great.
There you go. Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday. Walt, I'm not seeing that one. Maybe I'm looking at the other page, but I did not see that one. But get out and see Walt in Columbia, South Carolina as well this weekend.
Post up some information, Walt, because I don't know nothing about that show.
Let me open up the other one here and see if I can find something. I do see, wait, no, God, I even see something here for Sonia and Jimmy this weekend with an upcoming event. They're doing a Louder Than Your Mom audio and TBO, Team Base Outlaw. They are going to be, where is this one at? Man, let's see. It's at an Elks Club outside Butler on Interstate 49 in, looks like about a third of the way from Kansas City down to Springfield, Missouri. So southwest, or rather southeast of Kansas City.
Awesome.
So we got a lot of shows happening this weekend that I am not seeing anything about, unfortunately. That means we got to get some.
We need to get some information up for the one for
on that stuff.
South Carolina. But I can't find anything on it.
Yeah, this one is also a Coats for Kids drive. So bring some coats, bring some toys, depending on the show. Actually, it doesn't matter. Bring coats or toys to both of them.
Absolutely. We can always, get these things to wherever they're supposed to be.
The right people to get the right things to the right people. You can always take a donation.
Always.
Well, there we go, Greg. Michael Martin. There we go.
I just can't find anything about that show. If somebody can post up an address for us and a time, that would be amazing.
David, I think we might have to wait for Ray to have a show down in Trinidad. We'll go down there and ship a car down there somehow, or maybe just buy something.
Even mobile, like that. Close enough.
We could do a parking lot build. I've done it before. It is interesting.
This just blows my mind that we have shows that I don't see anything about.
Which kind of brings up what we were talking about last week, is how do you get a hold of us to have a show? Just find out who your local judge is and message us on the board, or if you know us personally, send us a message. We'll get you what you need for the show. We'll tell you what we need. We'll tell you what you should do. And the longer that we have until the show happens, the better. Because we want to be able to make sure that we can promote it properly, get a couple months at least out of it, putting it up 2-3 times a week, and a couple weeks beforehand, put it up daily, and even more so than that if it's a really, really big show like Slamology or something like that we will be at. We've got dates for some of those things already for next year, so stand by for the Loud coming your way somewhere soon.
All right. Everybody's saying it's Michael Martin, and I still don't see
it. Yeah, I'm not seeing that one either, unfortunately, but...
All right. Let's just put it this way. If you want to go to the show that's in South Carolina, message Michael Martin and ask, hey, where's the show? Since nobody can find it, we don't want to leave him out. He's got a show somewhere.
Message him relentlessly. That will remind us to keep a show properly formatted and properly advertised.
And just so everybody knows, Base Wars is having some website issues currently. They will be fixed pretty soon. Billy's trying to learn how to do all this stuff for us. So just be patient with us. Top 10s are getting updated. And we have Mr. Otis in here with us now.
Excellent.
See what's going on here.
Sir. How are you?
Everyone can see and hear me, but I can't hear you guys.
We can hear you just fine.
Hello?
Hey
there we go. I can hear you.
All right, that's good. How you guys doing? I'm sorry about that. I was out to eat.
That's perfectly fine.
It's got to happen that you got to have the fuel to get us the fuel. So
that's
perfectly
right.
fine.
Right. How do I turn the camera around?
When we blow up our subwoofers, what are we actually supposed to do with them?
Not throw them out.
No.
There we go.
There you are.
I'm trying to turn the camera around. It's not working. Let's see.
You'll figure it out in a minute. We're patient. We're not worried about this. We like seeing you.
Right.
And for anybody that doesn't know, this is Mr. Corey Otis from Corey Otis Designs.
Man, how do I do this?
Good evening, Mr. Nick. Good to see you. Good evening, Mike. Oh, and there's one of your guys. Ah, there we go.
Hold on, I got to get into here. I got to join the group quick for Otis
Now
Designs.
we've lost him. But he'll be right back with us, I'm sure. No, we don't just throw the subwoofer away and buy new ones. We go and we do what we're about to learn.
All right. So today
we can see it now.
We're gonna assemble a subwoofer one part at a time. Drop in rather. So we have.
Let's see what we can get going on here.
We have a 4-layer copper voice coil dual 2 impedance. And then down at the bottom, you can see I have a triple joint ring, which is 3D printed.
Okay, can you explain to us what the different spiders are? Because I know a lot of times they say it has an 8-layer spider. It has a 4-layer spider.
Mm-hmm.
What are we actually looking for?
Depends on the application. There is no right everything choice. It's just a question of whether you have an abundance of power to where you need the coil to stay still within the gap to gain higher SPL. Then generally you would want a higher quantity spider count.
Okay.
And that would be with the intentions of keeping the coil within the gap during burping frequencies of higher FS or whatever.
So what I'm kind of hearing is 8-layer for SPL and 4 for music.
There again, there is no right choice. It just depends on the motor as to which application is best for said motor.
Okay, because I've had some 4 layers that I've just completely destroyed. And then again, I've had some 8 layers I couldn't move.
Right. So if you have a 4-layer gap, such as the HDC4, and you're able to fit an 8-layer coil in it,
mm-hmm.
If the coil is shorter, then it's going to move like crazy because then your efficiency is going to go through the roof. Because the taller the coil in the gap, the harder it is to move, because any bit of the coil that is below and above said gap is null and void and just generating heat.
Okay.
So if you took this coil and shortened it to probably half the height that it is and put it in this gap and added in a heavier spider, its movement would be limited and it would be incredibly effective because 90% of said coil would be in said gap.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Oh, love that blue.
This is a Neo motor that Jeff Hubert built. There's only 2 of them in the world. I use it for my mock-up motor all the time. So it's got more Neo on it than any 4-inch Neo motor that I'm aware of. Well, I think there's 13 or 14 pillars.
I love that.
Definitely would not want that thing matching up against another Neo motor in the area with you. Probably never be able to get them apart.
Yeah, it is not fun. Been there, done it. So we have right here, this is a prototype motor that is one of one. And it's got some technology in it that no other motors have. And its Gauss reading is over 13,000. It's really, really, really strong. So, I nearly got these 2 stuck together the other day. That was scary. So, anyway, we're going to go back to some basic things. How to shim your voice coil. If you have let's see. Not sure how tall this coil is. Give me a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, break this down into beginner English for all of us blondes, please.
Sure.
We would appreciate that.
So if you have
Oh, I think he froze. Let's give it a minute. Maybe he'll be right back with us.
Let me just touch on something that Corey said there as well about a Gauss factor, which it's a measurement of how strong your magnets are. Your typical fridge magnet is somewhere between about 75 and 100. Regular iron ferrite magnets, depending on how big they are, anywhere from about 300 up to about 1,500. And Neos, again, depending on how big they are, anywhere from 2 to 5,000, maybe a little bit more.
Ooh.
Doesn't necessarily translate to the strength of it, but the pulling factor on them, which is very different than magnetic force. So,
Okay, well, give us the rundown on the difference between ferrite motors and Neo motors. Which one is best for this?
what exactly? I'm sorry.
All right, because your Neos, they get hot. Okay, I've got a few Neos, and yeah, I get them hot. So, is it best to have a ferrite motor for SPL or Neo?
So if your intention is to burp only, ideally Neo would be your number one choice. Neodymium magnets are generally 10 times as strong as ferrite magnets.
Okay.
However, density of said motor is very important. Density is essentially the weight of said magnet and how well the heat is dissipated throughout said substrate. So if you have a very light Neo motor, such as the FI-BTL N2, you only have, here's a radiator, which is nice, and then all your heat is primarily saturated through your substrate of your top plate, which is then going to yield to the rest of the motor.
I've never even seen one like that.
The goal is to keep your coil cool within the gap.
Mm-hmm.
So the more efficient the motor, the more apt that motor is to throw the coil in and out above and beyond said gap. Now, when the coil is going above and beyond said gap, whatever is not within said magnet structure is strictly turning into heat.
Okay.
So there is no best motor per application. It just depends on how said motor reacts in said customer's enclosure.
Got you. God, he's got all the good stuff around there.
A couple of things. I think that's a Rockford T2 4-inch inner diameter coil motor. Interesting coil. And it's got 3 different giant pies of ferrite. Motor. Anybody have any questions?
I don't see any yet. I'll keep up with the comments and shift questions your way as they come.
I appreciate it.
So if anybody has any questions for him, now's the time to ask, because he's a hard person to get a hold of.
While I'm out to dinner with the old lady.
Actually, every time I've ever asked him a question, he was right there to answer it. So wants to know if that was an Omega motor.
The 40K Omega.
Yeah.
Ranks right up there with the Funky Pups.
Show you guys around real quick if you'd like. I've got your favorite, of course.
Ooh, those.
And here we have one of the first of Jacob Fuller's U version 2 ferrites. Sundown Audio. I can't flip it with one hand. There's the U version 1. Then I've got some giant ferrites in the back. 11.5-inch diameter motors. 4-inch coil.
And people can just message you and have you build a sub for them to their liking, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
If I don't have it, I'd be happy to source something for them.
Well, usually if they tell you what they need and tell you what kind of box they have, they'll be in good shape when they get their subs.
Right.
Ooh.
There's an OG ferrite juggernaut.
I love this.
That's funny. Then we got
Definitely an OG sub right there, as far as the big boys are concerned.
there's the team juggernauts. Triple stack. Got another one up there. HDC4. And this is what I intend on putting in my van. Big old motor. That's a Crystal Audio Solutions. I can't remember the sub name of it, but
That's a name I haven't heard of in a minute.
No.
They were really popular for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
There we
Some
go.
carbon fiber cones.
now see, now we're talking my language.
A lot of people think that you have to have a carbon fiber cone to get loud, and that's not necessarily true. It does help because essentially you're firing a piston into the box that's not flexing during movement of said sub, whereas paper cones, they'll move substantially. If you put it on an extremely high-speed camera, you'll be able to see the cone itself actually moving. Yeah, and that's something that people really haven't shown in the car audio industry that I've seen so far.
All right, here we go. How much
There's a great
temperature
question.
and for what length of time does it take to degrade a neomagnet? It is a good question, Eric.
Ask the whole question again, if you don't mind.
How much temperature and for what length of time does it significantly degrade a neomagnet?
350 degrees Fahrenheit, or any period I would say above like 10 minutes, you can completely demagnetize any substrate, whether it be neodymium and or ferrite.
Is there a way to recharge the neos? Because I know we can recharge ferrites.
Yes, you can recharge neo. However, with my, go ahead. Okay.
I said, can you recharge the neos?
I can. However, with my neodymium fixture, I'm only able to do individual blocks. I cannot charge an entire motor.
Okay. Because you're one of the rare few people that I've even heard of having to where you could recharge the ferrites.
Right.
Must not be very, very common.
Well, the neodymium fixtures are primarily over in China. Here we have some CMAX
Good Lord.
batteries just built up. This is my magnetizer. So essentially how this works is we have all of this entire panel on the back side, but a battery.
Okay.
Giant battery that is then transferred through these 4-aught cables, a magnetizer fixture. Now, magnetizer fixture is a big old voice coil. From here to here is nothing but a giant 12.5-inch coil. Same thing you would have in your subwoofer. So,
How long does it usually take to recharge a set? Are
3
we talking
seconds.
like days or hours?
Seconds.
Oh,
So you turn the magnetizer on. Your output voltage is here. It tells you when you're able to press the button. And this is just input via 220 volts DC. I'm sorry, AC. And then, so essentially I can make a motor completely dead and or fully charged. I just took a socket off my impact, if you put your socket there and or anything else that's metal, including a I'm not sure what you call that for your heart, pacemaker. If you put your pacemaker up there, this one zap is going to screw up your heart rate because it's sitting there. It'll throw off the rhythm of the pacemaker. So when I press this button, this socket's going to go flying. 3, 2, 1.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's wild. There's a lot of force. Now, what we can do that's crazy and backwards is we can put a divider between the magnet fixture and an opposing magnetic force, which in this case happens to be aluminum, and a basket, a speaker basket. So if I put something on there that was copper, that would be more conductive to set energy, and it would be more velocity because the force is going to be opposing to whatever object is there. So if you press the button here,
Okay, I would be playing with that all the time.
it's dangerous.
I haven't seen a speaker pop out of an enclosure like that in months.
I hope you'd never see it. So at one point, I ended up hooking a voice coil up to the magnetizer. So I hooked the 0 gauge wires up to the coil itself, and I was putting a socket inside the coil, right? And I was using it as essentially a rail gun. So the opposing force is going to go all into this motor or into this magnet, which is going to reject or attract whatever is nearest. So I was shooting sockets across the room and stuff, and then I ended up cooling the voice coil down with some water, and then I hit it again with a magnetizer, and the entire coil exploded. It was probably the loudest bang I had ever heard. Meanwhile, my lady was in there sleeping. She didn't hear a thing.
Oh no.
She didn't hear nothing.
We're all in trouble.
Nope.
All the toys.
Corey, you have way too many toys.
They have batteries and batteries and batteries. We ended up building all these today.
I see headways and C-Max. What are the blue ones?
The blue ones are Leishton cells. I ended up building this battery for my van. That is or not for my van, for the bus, for our traveling mobile. So it's 800 amp hour. It's a whole lot of capacity. Those are the same cells that you're using, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe that those are the same cells that you're using.
Justin,
If you're
Otis is down in North
interested in
Florida.
anything Corey has, I'm pretty sure it's all for sale. Just
Yeah,
message
Justin.
me online.
If you want to private message me, you're more than welcome. And or join our group on Facebook. It's Otis Designs.
Thank you, dear. We appreciate you being here to show us this stuff tonight.
Of course.
So if y'all can support him in any way, let him know.
So there again, people may ask what is better? Is a neodymium better for SPL or is a ferrite? Well, the primary question is which is the greater opposing force to said coil? Doesn't matter whether it's neodymium and or ferrite. The question is
Mr. Jimmy Pittman says, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How's everybody else?
God, I'm just loving walking around in shop.
I'm trying to find my magnet.
I think most of the rest of us, quite honestly, are drooling a little bit as to what else can we see, and wow, look at all the fun things to play with.
There's some HDC4 drop-ins I built up today. Carbon fiber.
From scratch, correct?
Correct. One piece at a time until they're done. Trying to find. I have a tool laying around here somewhere. Of course, this is Houdini shop. Anything that I have is as good as lost, unless my girlfriend puts it away. Then I can find it immediately if I ask her. So, unlike the rest of the industry, I have top joint rings that fit exactly flush to the top of the cone. Depending on which cone, I've got several different ring options, which will essentially adhere the coil to the cone with a mechanical bond instead of primary industry will just rely on glue. Glue is not that strong across a thick substrate. So the thinner you're able to make that, the stronger the bond.
Rip mines.
So yeah, that's a very, very cool, simple thing that few people have thought of. So I've got my own triple joint rings, which are essentially the same exact thing as the sundown bottom joint ring. And then what I'll do from there is I'll cut up another ring to take and put on the top of the spider to prevent said spider from losing the bond of the former. So that right there is nearly a 1/2 inch bond, which shouldn't break. I have yet to have a customer come back to me saying that they shot the spider through the ring, which can happen. It's just a question of how much power do you have and how much opposing motor force do you have against that coil.
Ooh, I love
there again on top, I guess.
Very nice.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, trying to break that versus trying to break a little bit of CA and or epoxy, good luck. It's not easy. Now what I intend to do later is I intend to make these pieces out of aluminum. So if I can make them out of hollow aluminum, they're going to be incredibly light and the same, if not stronger, than what these 3D printed rings are.
Jimmy says he bet he can break one.
Who was that? That's it, Jeremy Pittman. Come on, let's do it. Let's see it.
You know what?
Let's try it.
I would love to see him with a set of your subs just to do some testing, because he is about some send it.
I'm interested to give it a try.
Well, I've never seen a set of yours broke.
But listen, I have seen many pairs of my subs broke. I'm not to say that I that I can build an indestructible product, because I don't think anybody can.
A broke set.
I used to have a lot more inventory in here. My old lady says, I think you just move things around so that way it looks like there's less stuff here. I said, no, there's really less stuff. Need to get more. Here we have 6 level 5 motors and baskets. DC audio. I drove all the way to Tennessee to go buy these. Oh, there's a 7th one. And then here we've got the Sundown Team version 2 Neos with carbon fiber cones.
God, that's beautiful.
Yeah, they're pretty. And here I've got a customer that wants these, so I got to pack those up tomorrow and hopefully get them out. They're going across the country. Some of the iconic X version 2 18s by Sundown Audio.
We had somebody looking for some 18s in the group earlier.
Oh, really?
Subs.
Yes, sir.
That's cool.
I think they're out of Georgia, which is pretty close.
Sure. Some SSA evils. I ended up getting these in a trade with a customer of mine. I switched them over to the Shockwaves, and he loves them. Here we have something very, very rare, hard to come across. No. Hold on, that didn't work.
Kind of hard to do one-handed.
Yeah, no doubt. So these are DC Audio Level 5 SPL motors. There's probably only 20 of these. I'd have to ask Rusty, but I know there's not a lot of them. It's a 3-inch coil Level 5 with no pole vents, which means it's incredibly strong.
No pole venting on that. No bump plate on the back.
Nope. None whatsoever. So essentially a lot of these companies, they'll take and the holes on the back of the motor as well as the pole vent is strictly to dumb down said motor force to be able to get a lower FS. So the goal is, a lot of companies, they claim, higher motor force is better, higher. That's not necessarily true. The ZV4 back here really doesn't have that high of a motor force. However, is one of my favorite subs on the market. I absolutely love that motor. The same thing goes for the NSV3. Great sub. Really, really, really not the highest motor force. However, handles power incredibly well. I ran 8 of them in my van at one point for quite some time.
Ooh.
Yeah. There's a Bill Hutchinson that I built last week, I think.
God, that's beautiful.
Triple joint ring. Yeah, we got more triple joint rings. And of course, we've got the top joint ring, which you can't see underneath the dust cap. And I'm getting ready to import, hoping to buy another 100 Shockwave motors. Oh, which I can't seem to turn on the flash, but I've got them engraved on the back there. Sorry for the poor lighting.
Very cool looking.
Yeah. Just a ferrite motor, and I ended up having my brother with his fiber laser engrave the back of it for me. So something pretty cool that I can show you guys is so as you can see, I've wrapped the two leads together of this single 1 ohm coil. And what that's going to do is create an opposing force to said motor. So if you drop it in there with the leads crossed, this 2.5 pound coil is going to fall very slow into the motor. Now if I undo these connections and drop it, there's going to be no opposing force. The only opposing force is within the aluminum former. The copper's just dead weight pulling down on the aluminum. So I'm sure you've heard that stainless formers are better for SPL. Well, it's because there's no eddy currents involved. So essentially it would be a lack of motor force on said former. And the former is the material that your coil is wound around. So a lot of people run fiberglass formers, which also have no draw on the motor itself. So that would essentially put all of the force from the coil into moving force instead of into the former itself. It would just be that the higher the conductivity of the former, the worse it is for output of said driver. Got a good old Nightshade version 5 back there. Some more ZV4s. I've got a bunch of ZV4s laying around. Only 6 or 8 of them. There's some LAD Neos. 2.5 inch. I'm sorry, 2-inch neodymium blocks. Carbon fiber cones. Oh.
So what do you usually run in your vehicle since you can build any sub in the world?
Well, I flip-flop. It just depends on the day and what I have at the time. So, most recent...
Your answer is what you can afford.
Yeah. So, as for previously, I could afford compact version 1s, which was a Sundown Compact Neo. David says, what's the reason for Kevlar and stainless formers to give it raw motor force? Essentially, in a nutshell, yes, to avoid applying the motor force to the coil and strictly, I'm sorry, to the former and strictly to the coil itself, rather than to the entire substrate. So if your motor force is going into the former and the coil, that's not ideal. It would be ideal to have it strictly into the coil and said coil moving to create energy into the box to create output. So, sorry, Melissa, I lost my train of thought with you.
Oh,
I
you're
was
fine.
responding to David.
You're absolutely fine. I like your answer anyway. You run what you can afford at that time.
Sure. Yeah, so I was running the compact version 1s, and I decided I couldn't afford that, so I've sold 6 of them now, and I'm switching over to the Crystal Audio Solutions motors because they're just less expensive, and I think they're not going to get as hot because I like to ground pound and play music all day. So,
All right, we have a battery question. What's the best battery for sundown salt amps?
well, the question is what do you charge at? What voltage is your charge cap? Jeremy, I imagine you charge at 15.5.
14.
14 flat.
Yes, sir.
All right. With that being said, I would recommend probably Headway and or something that would be best for lower voltage format. I'm not too well versed on what's best in the lower voltage format. I know Limitless has several batteries that can do the lower voltage. And I know also that Ill Customs is coming out with some batteries that are best for lower voltage as well.
I absolutely love my Limitless and my Headway. I'm quite happy with both of them.
Awesome.
I must be too old school. I still use Maxwell caps. But then again,
Right.
I play music. I burp all day long.
Caps are good for burps.
Very
Sure.
true.
Lots of discharge really quick.
Old school caps. They had
Yeah,
their
and that would
place.
also kind of tie into Jeremy's question there is what do you do with the batteries as well? Are you burping? Are you demoing? Are you SQ all day? Do you run your vehicle when you do it? Do you not run it? Again, best is that one word that is very limiting because we don't get all the good answers most of the time. Got to get more information.
We have opinions.
All the above.
All right. Now let's discuss some glues. At what temperature does the glue actually start disintegrating?
Your adhesives on said voice coils are supposed to be cooked at 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if they were cooked properly, then your coil should not unwind until it reaches 500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, well, the inside of my box has been hot a couple times.
That I believe. I've had a customer tell me they could not touch their box because their coil was so hot on their subwoofer. That's an impressive task.
All right, got another question for
It's
you.
a scary task as well if your coil is that close to your box that it's actually heating up the box enough.
Well, what's the difference between the two? What do I like better? What do I dislike? So there's more motor force in the V2. Once again, I had told you guys previously in the video that companies will cut holes in the motors to reduce motor force. And what did they do on the U version 2 that they did not do on the U version 1? Well, they went ahead and decided to spend a little more money on tooling the pole itself. So they cut relief vents so that way your dust cap doesn't come flying off in the pole itself. They added a shorting ring on the top, which is said to reduce the motor force above the top of the pull piece. So therefore, it would snap back into the gap better. So without that pole having a hole in it, the motor force is incredibly increased. So in your smaller coil holes are also going to take in increased velocity in theory to said coil. These are a little larger, nearly an 1/8 inch. These are probably, well, definitely smaller. So I can't tell without putting a micrometer on it. Listen, have 2 spiders. So their goal with the space spiders is to create linear movement. One on the top of the coil, one near the bottom of the coil. So instead of having the coil rely on one spider in the middle and just the cone, some companies are not as good at developing a linear movement of said coil through the spider. So they'll take and space out the movement between 2 different spiders and the cone, trying to create a more vertical movement.
2 points of control rather than 1, essentially.
Well, it would be 3. So
Or
instead
3,
of having, right, 3 instead of 2, essentially.
All right, we have one more question.
That's a good question as well, right there, Jeremy.
Anything's good for SPL, depending on said application with said driver. So I've got incredibly loud on super budget friendly drivers, and I've stepped my way up to the best of the best according to SPL. And on some occasions, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend all the money to gain SPL. It's just a matter of what driver works best with said enclosure and said vehicle, and said resonant frequency within said driver. So there's a whole giant mess of equations that goes into it, and never does the equation pan out exactly as you had intended it to.
Oh, Matt has a question. He wants to know, what are your thoughts on incriminator audio?
Great subwoofers, incredible amps. God, I love their amps. Their subwoofer motors are off the charts as far as I'm concerned. It's just a matter of set application as to which way you want them to perform.
Yeah, we know. If you can get your motors down there to Corey, he can redo those for you and make them Corey Otis's instead. Just saying. You're not far from him, Matt. You wouldn't be the only one who owns some incriminator with, some Corey Otis up in it. There you go. And for those of y'all who don't know who Matt is, go and check his stuff out because he's got some really cool vans.
Matt, I'd love it if you'd message her. Sorry. He has a what, Melissa?
He has all Astro vans.
Yeah.
And he says they're all for sale.
I remember when I sold my Astro van, that was when I told myself I would be out of car audio.
Famous last words by many people.
Yeah. Then somebody stole some equipment from me, and that only fueled my fire. So now I'm back in. So anyway, I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well,
I'm gonna
we
go ahead.
appreciate you coming on because it's recon season and everybody needs to know where to go. They
Well,
don't know what
that
to do with the stuff when we blow it up.
most people just throw it away. I could be your dumpster.
Well, you can always buy the motors.
But anyway, it was great talking to you guys.
So are you going to recon that sub for us?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. I could build the drop in, but I'm not going to build the sub itself.
Okay.
If you guys would like to see that, I can show you.
Oh, they
Definitely.
definitely need to see this. Because a lot of people think they just throw them away when they're done.
Right. So we've got an overall measurement of the coil, 75 millimeter. And you divide that by 2, which is going to be 37 and a half. My top plate is 12 millimeter tall. So we're going to divide that in half. And then I've got a bump up on top of the top plate, which is 8 millimeter. Let's divide that into 2. So that's going to give us 4. So we're at 10 millimeter plus 37 and a half. So we're at 47 and a half millimeter. So 47 and a half millimeter is going to be my coil mark. Which I just score onto the coil with the micrometer. And then what I'll do, set the coil in the motor, set the height of said coil to the top of said top plate. Now I understand this is a little different than the normal driver because I do have the coil bump. I'm sorry, the bump up on the top of the other motor.
David had a question. So if it takes 500 degrees to undo a coil, does that mean the motor itself is destroyed after that?
Primarily, the coil is going to get a hell of a lot hotter than the motor itself because the coil's inside of the motor. And it's a lot easier to heat up the coil than it is to heat up the entire motor.
I know why
Because
he's
all you,
asking, because he burnt the glue off of his last ones.
which is fine. It's because your coil is going to take the brunt of the heat. Because again, David, if you have any of this coil above or below the top plate at all, your coil is going to get hot. Hot as hell up here, hot as hell down here, and hot as hell anywhere between. Anything that's above and below the gap itself is strictly generating heat. So it's going to require an incredible balance to be able to get your coil the same temperature as your motor. It's going to be really hard to do.
Okay.
So from my experience, it's nice to have a heavier motor to be able to essentially radiate the heat from the coil out into the motor into abyss.
Is it true that if you play 20 hertz low volume, it will cool your subs down?
Generally, yes. You're sitting there moving it and you're not requiring a lot of power to do so.
Because I've seen a lot of people do that trying to keep from cracking the motors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's very hard to crack a motor, but yes, it can be done.
And absolutely brutal sounds is a great sub too.
Indeed.
We love Joey.
Good stuff there. Now, the loaded question for you here, Corey, is do you have a favorite sub to work on or a favorite one to redo? Obviously, some of them being more difficult than others because of extra parts and extra labor that goes into them. Do you have something that you prefer working on?
I would say primarily the easier ones to assemble. Which one would sell best? That would be my primary answer as to which one's my favorite.
Sure.
So personal favorites versus sellability, that's two different things, but generally I would prefer to work on what's easiest to be sold.
Super talking about he finally coming back to the lanes, y'all. Y'all watch out for him. He done bought his membership. He ready. Gotta love it.
And so what I do that I've not seen anybody else in the industry do is I use the back of the micrometer as my depth gauge to the back of the spider. And I'll make sure that the measurement is the same all the way around prior to putting any adhesive down. Because you want to have this substrate completely even with the coil itself, so that way to have vertical movement and not trying to shoot down crooked.
Not a side-by-side rub like we'll hear on something that may or may not actually be blown.
Correct.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense.
Another thing. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying that makes a lot of sense. I do hear a lot of people that when they push down on their cones, they're like, oh, it's blown. I can hear a little bit of rub. And it might actually be a perfectly good coil, but it's twisted one way or another, forward, backward, left, right, whichever.
Right. The other thing a lot of people will do, especially in the SPL world, is they'll bubble their former, which means their coil got hotter than their former itself, which is what the coil is wound on. And if the outside material gets hotter than the inside material faster or fast enough, you're going to take and naturally you're going to bubble the former away from the coil itself. And people will automatically think their sub is blown just because they hear a scratch, and they're incorrect. A lot of people don't know, but you can sit there and play your sub through that bubble and not have any issues at all. Just have a little bit of noise in the meantime until you wear through that bubble on the former itself. So now what I'm using is a thin viscosity adhesive. It's going to wick into the former paper.
All right. If we have a dust cap that comes off, what is the best glue to put it back with?
E6000.
Okay. I'm asking just because might know somebody who does that quite frequently.
Yeah, it happens a lot with drivers that don't have a pole vent.
Oh, I can't wait. I love every vehicle that Matt owns. Do we have any more questions tonight? Always, you know, you're one of my favorite peoples.
Okay, so now we've got the bottom joint all glued up. Now what I'm doing is I'm wrapping the coil itself to the leads of the spider. Getting ready to solder those two materials together. Which is essentially a cold weld.
Hey, I just noticed your t-shirt. Do you have those available for us to buy somewhere?
What are you referring to?
Your t-shirt.
No. However, I need to get some more made so that way you can do so.
We need some t-shirts. Can't
All right.
advertise for you if we ain't got none.
Truth be told, you're right.
All right. Does somebody know what the top score in Godfather is currently?
160 plus. Almost guaranteed. Probably Jason Lucas at finals.
David Jenkins, speak up. What? It's a 55.
Oh, it's got to be higher than that.
Oh,
Maybe
he
that was
said he
Kingpin.
had it.
I don't remember. David, you're probably right.
We're going to go check.
Let me look.
Trying to do things that are not easy. How to hold your phone and solder at the same time. Good luck.
If you drop us, we're okay.
Yeah, but my phone is not.
David, you are correct. You're at a 55.05 right now. Joe, you're down 5 dB from him. Actually, four and some big change. You're at a 150.24.
Oh,
4 and a big quarter.
After you.
And yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't remember which one was the top one for Godfather or Kingpin. I couldn't remember. I apologize there, David. Not a class I see a lot of.
In your white van? Because I think you're in goat. Let me see if I can find what goat scores are.
Top goat right now is only 143.13.
In goat?
In goat. Looks like we've only had one entry so far.
What the? Wow.
That's a low high score for goat, considering that it's basically a totally unlimited category.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, well, goat's wide open for you. Come on, get it.
And if you're going to, remember, you got to have 5 shows in goat to qualify for finals for 2024, 25, 26, whenever we have the next one. It's not 5 shows. It's 5 shows with a score in goat or legendary or kingpin or stealth. It is 5 in that particular category.
And you have to have your memberships now. We are not playing this, gonna go back and look for your shows game. Get it now. They had us all messed up a week before finals.
I'm pretty certain there were even people that probably should not have even competed at finals because of it.
Oh no, we were due diligence on that one.
Put David on live. John, David is welcome to come on live anytime, as are you, as are any of our competitors. If you have something you want to talk about, we can definitely have you on. That's not a problem. Get a hold of myself or Melissa, Jimmy or Billy for Monday night. As long as you got a topic that's interesting that we can discuss for hour and a half, 2 hours, we can find something to talk about otherwise. Tonight happens to be subwoofers. And more specifically, the rebuild of them with Corey.
Speakers and shit.
There you go. Them loud things.
We break our own stuff, David. Don't worry.
Killing me.
So now what I'm doing, as I had mentioned before, is I'm trimming the top joint ring for the coil itself.
Mm-hmm.
To avoid additional adhesive and increase the bond strength.
I've seen some subwoofers that don't have that at the top, and that tends to be where they rip.
Yeah, agreed. So now what I'm doing is putting a thin bond of instant CA clear around the top joint there. I'll place my rings in the adhesive.
Corey, it doesn't look like you're going over the tinsel leads coming off of that. That is correct, right?
Correct.
Going in between them.
That's correct.
All right.
It's because the adhesive will break loose from the former prior to the ring itself. So when with my customers, said customer takes and moves this coil so far to the extent that the tinsel lead wants to rip loose from the spider itself, the adhesive is going to rip loose prior to the ring itself. So if and when that happens, at least we still have a bond between the tinsel lead and the coil itself there. So that's going to be, hopefully, customer isn't moving it far enough to be able to have it happen, but it does happen to where they'll actually take and physically rip those threads up off from the spider. And that's why on my spiders, I've had China raise them up off from the spider itself to prevent the fatigue on the actual stitching into the spider. So now we have that, but we're going to come back and wrap some additional adhesive on top of that. Do now.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that everybody argues about, but I want to know your answer. Are we supposed to give our subs break-in time, or can we just play them right out of the box?
Break-in is a question for the builder as to how well said adhesive joint is going to deal with the fatigue of the glue joint itself. So when you're sitting there yanking on a brand new glue joint, the question is how well is this going to stand up against this? If you're sitting there beating on something that's not so rigid and is potentially going to break, well, said company is going to encourage you to do a higher break-in period to prevent said glue joints from failing. So that's the primary reason, really, is to prevent this substrate from coming loose from this substrate. So if everything is rock solid, aka welded together, then no, break-in is not required.
See, this is why I ask.
John and I would be in the
Oh,
same.
Sand, why would we do that, John?
Good evening, Peyton.
What'd you say,
How
bud?
are you?
John and I would be in the same full send it right away. If it's a good product, we should be able to do it right away.
Correct.
And if it's a great product, we should never even expect it to fail. Because we've tuned our system.
Yeah, right.
We've got notes. People know that I am the note taker.
What'd you call yourself?
I call myself the note taker. I have little books, and actually, my little black book of notes. Not in this one. This is still an old one, but it's got notes that say what I'm looking for power, amperage, voltage, the day that I was doing it, my volume settings, all of that kind of stuff. And
Awesome.
I basically will know before I get to a show what my car is going to do. As long as I'm within a tenth or two, I'm happy.
Heck yeah. That's awesome.
If you don't test and you don't take notes, you don't know what it's going to do. You don't know how it might behave, what might break.
Right.
If anything in my system,
I just go over there.
It ain't going to be the sub. It ain't going to be the amp either.
I just run over there and normally break it. I'm like, oh, well, that's what I should have fixed. Damn it.
Because you were upgrading your fuse block and you weren't actually looking at the fuse, that you only got a 60 amp fuse. You needed that 80 or you needed that 200 instead of that 150. Made it look nice, but there's a difference between looking nice and fixing stuff in the lanes.
I hate fuses. Hashtag no fuse.
That might be next week's conversation, Melissa.
Oh,
I do not like fuses at all.
Oh, let's not, because I've got one car done one way and one vehicle done another way.
Fuses are added resistance.
See,
Yep.
that's what I was told, and that's why I removed some of them.
To fuse or not to fuse? Or rather, to fuse or to circuit breaker?
They're intelligent, and they're not.
Very true. I've seen enough of them stick in the past that they're questionable in any audio application. Although I do remember a few of the guys way back in the day fusing their speaker wires as well, just to make sure they didn't send too much power to them. I always thought that was rather interesting.
I do believe in fuses going to a battery, though. With the wires up under my car. Yeah, I do believe in having fuses there. My God, this thing, it was more in depth than I thought it was going to be. I had to put it together.
So we're currently building up an FINT 15-inch drop-in kit for a customer that ordered it, I don't know, 18 hours ago or so.
See, this is my lane runner's mindset.
Team no fuse.
Amen.
I've got a fuse.
You shouldn't. Team all fire.
One fuse up front.
Oh,
That's it.
I prefer fires.
Fire's good if you're Beavis and Butthead. Sometimes.
Well, that'd be me.
Y'all do y'all.
Now, Corey, I'm under the impression that the paper that you put in there is used basically as a spacer to make sure that the coil is, we'll call it centered, I guess, in that gap, correct?
Correct. Primarily in the application that I'm currently doing, my goal is to have the coil vertical.
Sure.
In the gap. Now, not necessarily centered as much as it would be vertical.
All right. Had one asked, why don't you use a gap tool?
A gap tool?
Mm-hmm.
For what?
for your.
What do you mean? Are you talking about a coil shim?
Yes.
They're right there. I was gonna say I saw them sitting there before.
So the goal is with my current build is strictly to have the coil vertical in the gap to the cone itself. Now, if I was building a subwoofer, then I would be more so keen on having equal amounts of paper back and forth and or aka a gap tool,
Okay.
which every coil is going to be different for said gap, and that would require infinite number of gap tools, which I do not have. So currently I just set my top joint ring, and then I'm going to come back with some additional adhesive and fill any voids that are still existent.
It's starting to look like a subwoofer finally.
Sorry it took me so long. Now I'm activating the adhesive that did in fact come through beneath the cone. And then I'll come back and double back and do my additional joints now.
Good
Hey,
evening,
Brandon.
sir. How are you? I've never seen anybody use clear CA glue before. I've always seen the black.
It's better for a thinner bond.
Okay.
So the adhesive is a bit thinner, which is going to allow it to seep deeper into the crevices. The rubberized CA is better for joints that move. So I don't know if you noticed, but the primary joint between the top joint and the top of the spider itself was the non-flexible glue. And then on top of that, I use the flexible CA glue.
Okay, so
Same-
that's what the black is the flexible. Okay.
Correct. And same thing goes for the bottom joint. It was clear
All right.
initially, which ideally the joint between the triple joint ring and the spider itself should not move under any circumstance. Everything else, if it moves a little bit, that's better than not moving and breaking.
Matt wants to know, what are the break-in time on your subwoofers?
Send it if you must.
Okay. You just told the wrong person that, though.
Doesn't matter. It only matters if he breaks it.
Corey, Mr. Brandon Philbrick says hello.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Mr. Brandon Philbrick. All right, activator. So now I've doubled back, and I've got a bond on the outside of the triple joint ring, the inside of the triple joint ring, the underside of the triple joint ring, top joint, whatever you prefer to call it. And there we have a dust cap. It sits over the top of all of it. So the last thing that I still have yet to do is I need to wrap the underside of the cone itself with some additional CA. And then we will have a completed drop-in.
Awesome.
I'm going to knock that out now.
Do
Adrian's
we
got
have
a great
any
question there.
baseboard
Yeah,
shows
thank you,
coming
Melissa.
up in Houston?
Currently, right now, Adrian, we don't have anybody down in the South Texas area that I know of. I believe, trying to think who'd be the closest to Houston.
Richard?
Probably, oh no, not Richard. Houston's on the Gulf Coast.
Might be closer to get to Jordan.
I was going to say it might honestly be Jordan or maybe Brad, depending on how far Brad wants to travel. If he would go south of the DFW area, I honestly don't even know how far south Houston is from Dallas Fort Worth. So.
All right, David said there's one coming up in February there.
Well, there you go. I'm going to have to go look.
Figure out what judge it is too, because they need to start following his judge.
February. I'm seeing only 2 listed in, well, actually, technically only 1 listed in February on the events tab, but that does not mean that's the only one.
I think part of our events are coming up missing.
I am going to throw Billy under the
I'm
bus on
coming
that
to
one, only because of
Georgia,
the form.
but it will have to be worth my while. I have a lot of Alabama shows, and
True.
Georgia is a good distance from me. But for the right people, I will come. But we are looking for a Georgia judge.
Let's see here. I am not seeing whatever show you were talking about, David. Where should I be finding that one? Because I'm looking at the main list. I'm not seeing anything there yet. But that, again, that doesn't mean it's not there.
Let's see what I can find.
Well, there we have it.
Oh, that looks amazing. And built
That
from
looks
just
very
parts.
nice, Corey. You know, you offer custom cones, of course, and different options for the coils, dual 2s, dual 4s, dual 1s, I assume.
Correct.
So we can just call you and ask for what we really want, and you'll help us build it.
As long as I've got it, yes. Otherwise, if I don't have it, I'd be happy to order it.
Okay. Love it.
So, anyway, I appreciate you guys having me. My phone is nearly dead. Thankfully, I didn't run out of battery during building the speaker.
Well, we appreciate you rushing home to come show us how to do this. It is
Of course.
season, so we all need the help right now. Ooh.
Yeah, no problem. And if any of you guys have just got a question and want to ask, feel free to reach out. I really don't mind helping out. It's just a question of whether you can get in touch with me or not. If you don't hear from me, I'm definitely not ignoring you. I may have missed your message. Just reach out another time and I'd be happy to respond at that point.
Yep. He works nonstop, so give him a minute to answer his phone.
So
And
thank you
get us
guys
some
very much once
t-shirts,
again.
Dan.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Melissa?
We need some t-shirts that look just like your dust caps.
Okay, that shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you for coming on, sir. We appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate having you. Yeah, you guys having us. Take care.
Yeah.
Have
Thank you
a
much,
good
Corey.
night, and thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was awesome. We actually got to see how our drop-ins are actually made.
Phil, I know that sub. We can find something for that. Adrian, yes, there are directly from Kicker some L7 recones that are still available. They are getting to be few and far between, but there are some that are out there still. And Phil, just for you,
Absolutely.
my SpaghettiOs raw out of the can.
Oh my God. Okay. Team No Fuse over there eating from the can.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
of
it does.
course. Corey always does amazing work. And when I asked him to come on, I told him just do what he wanted to do.
Perfect.
This is what I really wanted to show y'all because I know his work. It is always amazing. He doesn't take any shortcuts. He puts in the labor time that's required for this.
In my opinion, went above and beyond what some other places do with the extra work that he puts into them with the top coil and the bottom side of the coil as well.
I've
The
got a
extra
set of
rings that
his
are there,
downstairs,
extra
and if
durability.
you look, his glue all the way around is meticulously perfect. Oh man, the glue job on them is amazing. I started to lug one all the way up the stairs just so y'all could see it, but that thing's heavy. And yes, he is good people. He helps as many people as he possibly can out. All right, do we have any more questions for tonight? If not, we'll go ahead and get out of here for this evening.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing any more questions unless someone wants to know how to get a hold of Corey. And that's just, again, like David just posted there, the Otis Design Group on Facebook. It's under Otis Design, OTIS Design.
Reach out to him.
Reach out. I joined right at the beginning of the show. I knew that he had a page, but I could never find it because I always thought it was under Corey's. I thought it was under his first name. I just found it tonight. So
excellent. Everybody give him a like, give him some love. Let him know we appreciate him because, man, you couldn't ask for a better person to answer questions. He has had to answer a million for me, and he's always been very polite about it. But if we have nothing else, we will see y'all soon. And we'll go ahead and play an exit video and get on out of here for tonight. Thank you, Dan.
thank you much,
Appreciate
Melissa.
having you too.
Thank you, Corey, Matt, David. Who else has been on here? Adrian, Brandt, everybody that's been on. Thank you much. We'll see you in the lanes.
Thank you.